There are advantages to double layer hammocks, especially in cold weather like today. You can see the river is pretty well iced over. You can insert some kind of sleeping pad in between the two layers of fabric to insulate from the cold air that just never stops circulating underneath a hammock. In warm weather, two layers of fabric are going to stop mosquitoes from biting you. One layer of fabric won't do it. All my camping is in cold weather, and I figured as long as I'm making a double layer hammock, I might as well make it reversible, so I'd want one fabric to be white to blend in when there's snow on the ground, and the other fabric to be camo for when there isn't any snow like today. And I still wanted a sewn-in bug net though, even though I only do cold weather camping, because around here above 50 degrees, bugs start getting active. And I don't like to use a tarp if I don't have to, so the bug net keeps the leaves and the twigs from falling in my face. Let me get you set down here. So this is it. It is a double layer hammock with a sewn-in bug net, and it is reversible. You can see it's turned to white right now. On the inside is camo, and we'll see at the end of the video how to reverse it to the camo. Let me give you a tour around it. Here we're at the foot end of the hammock. And this is where one of the openings is between the two layers of fabric. This is where I can insert my insulated sleeping pad like this thermarest. I've also got one guy out point here at the foot end of the hammock, and I've got another one here at the head end of the hammock. And these two guy out points being diagonally opposite pull the hammock in a sort of asymmetric shape, and I sleep diagonally that direction. The zipper is a two-way, and it's got two double tab sliders, so I can open the hammock anywhere along the zipper's length, and that's a good thing because when it's reversed, that end is the head end. Inside the hammock, I've got a second opening, and without having to exit the hammock, if I need to reach in and adjust my sleeping pad, I can do that from inside. I've also got a ridge line. With a hammock with a sewn-in bug net, you about have to have one. If you hang it in correctly and you don't have a ridge line, you could rip the bug net right out of the hammock. I've also got a gear loft that I made from the scraps of cutting out the bug net. Okay, let's head back to the sewing room and we'll see how to make a reversible hammock. I'll give you some other ideas for reversible hammocks and show you how to make one, and then we'll come back out here and I'll reverse it to the camo. These are the materials I'm using for my winter hammock. 4 yards of each of the two hammock body fabrics, white ripstop polyester and multicam ripstop nylon. The bug net is actually a black polyester window panel, 55 by 108 inches. Thank you, Cryptic Cricket, for that idea. The zipper is 8.5 feet of number 5 zipper coil, and I've got two double tab sliders I put on from either end so they meet in the middle. Outdoor thread to match the colors of the fabrics. And these are the guy out points, 3-inch pieces of grosgrain with these small plastic triangles on them. Other ideas for reversible hammocks: if you do year-round camping, you might want a camo with more green like Marpat, reversing to one with more gray like the ACU Digital. If you do warm weather camping, Marpat reversing to another one with green, the Woodland Camo. If you do stealth camping, black, reversing to any camo really. In the description below I'll have links to sources for all these items. I'm going to start working on my hammock body fabrics. It's critical to the success of the rest of the project that the two fabrics are exactly the same size, the same width and the same length. I've taken the time to fold up both fabrics, and I've got the full width about 60 inches this direction, but I folded them up so they're manageable size this way. And I lined up the edges and I trimmed one end and then I trimmed the other. The multicam was about 1.5 inches wider than the white. Now I'm going to lay the two fabrics out lengthwise, and I'm going to lay them on top of each other, and I'll trim them both to the same length. I've got my two hammock fabrics together, folded in half lengthwise. This is the folded edge, and I know that's a good edge, so from that edge I'm going to reference everything else, like I'll be able now to square up this end of the hammock. And now I've squared up the other end at 139 inches, 11 feet 7 inches. Some things are just going to be easier to show you with these small scale representations of the full size fabrics. And I've got both my hammock body fabrics exactly the same width now, and they ended up being 59 inches wide, and the same length, 11 feet 7 inches. The next thing I want to do is cut curves in both ends of both fabrics. This curve tends to eliminate that ridge that forms down the center of a gathered in hammock that's been left cut straight across. On my curve, I want 3 inches of drop at both ends of the curve on both ends, so my sides are going to end up being 6 inches less than the center line of the hammock. Let me show you how I made this paper pattern. I've taped 3 ordinary sheets of copy paper together end to end, so now I've got one sheet of paper 8.5 inches wide, 33 inches long. I calculated the radius of the curve I need with a 3-inch drop at the ends to be 11 feet. So 11 feet, the other end of this cord is taped to the floor. And this cord is Tech Line from DIY Gear Supply. It's going to be the structural ridge line of this hammock, so there's very little stretch in it. I've already put a fixed loop in this end. Now I can use my pen to draw my curve. I still have my two fabrics together, folded lengthwise. This is the folded edge. I can line up my paper pattern at this corner, making sure it drops 3 inches at this end, and now I can follow the curve with a rotary cutter. I've actually transferred this paper pattern to 1/8 inch masonite because I plan on making more than one hammock, so I can reuse this. Now, before I go any further, I've got some decisions to make. Like most people, I sleep on a gathered in hammock on the diagonal. So will I more commonly sleep with my head to the right or to the left? Second, on which side do I want the zipper? On the right side of the hammock or on the left? And third, where do I want to leave an opening between the two layers of fabric where I can insert my insulated sleeping pad? And you may remember from the beginning of the video, mine was here at the foot end on the side opposite the zipper. So wherever I want that opening, I'm going to go ahead and sew a 36-inch long rolled hem. And a rolled hem is one where you fold the fabric over and then fold it again and sew. And that puts the raw edge of the fabric on the inside of a hem, and that's what I want for 36 inches. I also need a 36-inch long rolled hem right here on the camo fabric. So bottom fabric, the white, 36-inch long hem here, and opposite long end, I need another 36-inch long rolled hem in the camo fabric here. But there's more. The other 3 corners of each of the two fabrics also need shorter rolled hems, only 2 inches long. So camo, 36-inch long rolled hem here, 2-inch long rolled hem here, here, and here. And white fabric, 36-inch long rolled hem here, 2-inch, 2-inch, and 2-inch long rolled hems. And I've got, right now, the two fabrics together, right sides facing out. So this is the right side of the white. This is the right side of the camo. And I mention that because I want to be sure that I roll those hems the right direction so they roll to the inside. Okay, I'll go sew those hems. We'll meet back here. I've sewn the 8 partial hems in the corners of the fabric as I showed earlier. Here you can see the 36-inch long hem in the white fabric and the 2-inch hem, one of the 2-inch hems in the camo fabric. Now I'm ready to sew them together across the curved ends. But I don't want to do it with them still with the right sides facing out. I want to swap their positions and sew them together with the right sides facing in. So I'll pull the white fabric out from underneath and lay it on top of the camo. And I'll do that off camera with the full-size fabrics. I swapped the position of the two fabrics. Now the white is on top. Still in the same orientation. This is the 36-inch long rolled hem on the white fabric, and this is still one of the 2-inch long rolled hems on the camo. I'm ready to sew across the curved ends of the hammock to sew the two fabrics together, and I'm going to practice good sewing techniques. You can see I've already clipped these two fabrics together. Ordinarily I'd use pins, but the fabrics are just so thin and flimsy, the clips work out better. I'm going to sew them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to start the line of stitching by sewing forwards on my machine and then reversing it and backing up and then sewing forwards again. And at the end of the stitching, I'll do the same thing. I'll sew forwards and then back up and then sew forwards again. And they tell me that locks in the stitches at both ends. I'll go ahead and sew these. I'll finish clipping them together. I'll sew both ends of the hammock together and then we'll meet back here. Now I've got a single line of stitching all the way across both curved ends, but these ends are going to be supporting my weight, so I don't want to rely on just one line of stitching. So I've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to fold the two fabrics together over that 1/4 inch, and then I'll fold them over another 1/4 inch all the way across, and I'll sew it down with 2 more lines of stitching, and that will give me triple stitching at both ends. I folded the fabric over twice, create a nice rolled edge. I've sewn it down with 2 lines of stitching, and you can see I've matched the thread to the color of fabric showing, in this case white. What I end up with now, when I open up the two fabrics, is this flap of fabric that sticks up. So I'm going to fold it down flat, and I'll sew it down with 2 more lines of stitching like I've already done to the other end. And now I'll have 5 lines of stitching at each end of the hammock. I've set aside the ripstop fabric so I could work on the bug net, which you may remember I'm making from this black polyester window panel. 55 inches wide, 108 inches long. And in general, I'm following the instructions I downloaded from DIY Gear Supply's website for the shape of a sewn-in bug net, which is to point the ends by cutting these 45-degree angles. So I've laid out my window panel on the cutting table lengthwise, and I fold it in half lengthwise. That's the folded edge, like that. And I measured across, and it should be 27.5 inches because that's half of 55 inches of the total width, and it is. Then I measured along this open edge the same 27.5 inches. Remember that number, 27.5 inches. And I connected this point with that far corner with my straight edge, and now I can cut those 45-degree angles with my rotary cutter. But I don't want to cut the other end just yet because I don't know the total length to make it. I can't size it the same as DIY Gear Supplies. They made theirs for their 10.5 foot hammock, which has straight ends, and my hammock is 11.5 feet long with rounded ends. So what I do know is these 3 edges of the bug net are going to be sewn to one side of the hammock fabrics, and these 3 edges, of course, are going to be sewn to the other side, so they need to be approximately equal. These 3 edges total length needs to approximately equal this side of the hammock. So I laid my hammock out and measured my sides, and they are 132 inches long. So these 3 sides need to add up to 132 inches. And after cutting this 45-degree angle, I measured these angled sides, and they are 39 inches. And I know I'm going to have 2 of them. 39 inches plus 39 inches, that's 78 inches. Subtract 78 from the 132 inch total length I need, and that leaves this bit to be 54 inches. And I'm actually going to subtract an inch from that, make it 53, to account for channels I'm going to have sewn in the ends of the hammock. So, the total length point to point for my bug net, remember that these were 27.5. The triangles cut out, so 27.5 plus 27.5, that's 55. 55 plus this 53-inch center section, that's 108 inches, the length of my window panel. I'm going to lay out the window panel and make sure it is 108 inches, and then I'll be able to cut the other end like I did this one. Here are the three full-size components laid out on the floor. The hammock body fabrics, the ripstop, the bug net that I just cut, and the zipper, 8.5 feet. And you can't tell from the video probably, but I folded everything in half. So the bug net I folded point to point in half so I could find the middle of it. I did the same thing with the hammock body fabrics. I folded them in half and marked the middles on both edges. And the zipper I folded in half to find the center of it. And if I don't say it from here on out, I'm lining everything up at those center marks so it's all even from end to end. The next step is to sew the zipper into this edge of the bug net. And there are some details. The first detail, the zipper needs to be sewn flush to the edge of the bug net, and that means that this outside edge of the zipper will be even with the outside edge of the bug net. Second detail, here where the bug net has this 45-degree angle cut, the zipper wouldn't follow it very well, except I made a 45-degree notch cut on this inside fabric of the zipper and just a snip on the outside fabric, and now the zipper can follow that angle easier. In the third detail, I'm going to use a zipper foot and just sew one line of stitching along this inside fabric, keeping all my stitches to the inside of the teeth. No stitches on the outside. One line from one end of the zipper to the other, and then we'll meet back here for one more detail. You can see I've sewn the bug net to the zipper with one line of stitching, kept it on this side of the zipper teeth. So the last detail, the problem now is the bug net covers up the zipper teeth on this side of the zipper, and I need those exposed also. So here, I'm going to cut a short snip at each end of the zipper, fold the fabric back once and twice, and now the zipper teeth are exposed, and I'm going to sew this bug net fabric down to the zipper, this side, the inside again, with two lines of stitches, and then the zipper will be sewn to the bug net with triple stitching. And if you're wondering what the stuff is along the edge of the bug net where I've cut it, it's fray check, because this fabric really frays badly. All right, I'll get this sewn, and then we will lay the bug net out with the hammock body fabrics again. I've got the two big components of the hammock ready to go together. The bug net on top, and it's got the zipper sewn into that edge. And the hammock body fabric's on the bottom, the white fabric on top, and they're sewn together across the curved ends. This side of the hammock body fabrics, this is where those 3-foot long rolled hems are. Underneath the white, the camo has the rolled hem at this end. You may be able to see that end, there's a 3-foot long hem in the white. So remember, those represent where the openings between the fabrics are going to go, and they are on the opposite side from the zipper. You probably realized, because this is a double layer hammock, and especially because it's a reversible hammock with a sewn-in bug net, I'm having to assemble it inside out. So the two fabrics are still right sides facing in towards each other, and before I sew the bug net in, I'm going to have to put it in between the two fabrics, so it gets sewn in the middle. I've already said these three sides of the bug net are sewn to one side of the hammock, and of course these three sides are going to be sewn to this side of the hammock, and they're sewn flush. So that's why I've got the hammock body over, I've got the bug net over, even with that edge of the hammock. You can probably see here where the bug net goes at this 45-degree angle, I'm going to have to scrunch the hammock body fabric over to match that angle and pin it together and then sew it. I'm going to have sewn channels at each end of the hammock, and they're going to be 1.5 inches wide, so I'm not going to sew the last 1.5 inches of each end. So I'll start sewing. Once I get this all pinned together, I'll start sewing 1.5 inches from this end, and I'll stop sewing 1.5 inches from the other end. also I'm going to sew with 2 lines of stitches. And I want everything triple stitched, but I'm going to save the 3rd line of stitching for once I get the hammock right side out. And the last detail about this, I want to be sure and get my guy out points in. I want 2 guy outs for when it's turned to white fabric, and I want 2 guy outs when it's turned to camo fabric, so I need 4 guy out points total. And they're going to go 3 feet from each end on both sides. So I need 4 guy out points. The one 3 feet from your right, the guy out point is going to go between the white fabric and the bug net. The one 3 feet from your left side, it's going to go between the bug net and the camo fabric. And I'll get this all pinned together at this side, and I'll show you in close-up this one guy out point. I've got my bug net and zipper assembly in between the 2 fabrics now, the white on top, camo on the bottom. And I've got marked 3 feet from the right end where one of the guy out points goes. This one goes between the white and the bug net. The one 3 feet from the other end goes between the bug net and the camo fabric. So I'll get this clipped back into place, and I'm going to sew my 2 lines of stitching this time, keeping on the outside edge of the zipper. I'll use my zipper foot. I'll sew 2 lines starting 1.5 inches from one end, ending 1.5 inches from the other end. I sewed the bug net to the zipper on the inside edge. I'll sew the ripstop fabrics to the outside edge. I finished sewing the zipper side, and I spun the hammock 180 degrees, so this is the zipper side now, the side away from you. The side closest to the camera is the side that has the 36-inch long rolled hems. The white fabric has the 36-inch hem in this end. The camo has the hem in that end. And what I've done is I've clamped the opposite fabric to the bug net. So I clamped the camo for 3 feet along this side to the bug net, and the other end, the camo has the long rolled hem, so I clamped the white fabric for 3 feet to the bug net. I will sew that minus the 1.5 inches at the end. I still want to leave the ends open, 1.5 inches. With the remainder of 3 feet, I'll go ahead and sew one of the fabrics to the bug net. 2 lines of stitching. I don't need to use a zipper foot this time. This middle section, about 5 feet long, I'm going to leave that for right now, and we'll do that when I come back. I've sewn the bug net to the camo at this end of the hammock, 3 feet worth. I've sewn the bug net to the white at this end of the hammock, and that left the 5-foot section in the middle where I'm going to sew all 3 layers together, camo, bug net, and white. So I've got those clamped. I've also got the guy out points in, again, the right hand side, 3 feet from the end on the right hand end. The guy out point goes between the bug net and the white. On the left hand end, the guy out point goes between the camo and the bug net. I'll get this sewn 2 lines of stitching, and then I'll be ready to turn it right side out. I turn the hammock right side out by reaching into one of the 36-inch openings and just pulling everything out through it. And now at each end of the hammock, where the bug net comes to a point, in the hammock body fabrics, I've got this large loop. And this is where that 1.5 inch wide channel, I'm going to sew it. So starting at one end, sewing all the way around that loop. I won't need to sew across the bug net though. I finished sewing the 1.5 inch wide channel all the way around these loops of fabric at both ends of the hammock. Now the last sewing step, I want to do my triple stitching, so I've already double stitched it along the long seams. And you can see it here on the zipper side. The fabric can jump up into the zipper teeth, so I'm going to sew one more line of stitching holding the fabrics away from the zipper teeth, and I'll sew it from one end to the other. And I'll do a similar line of stitching on the other side of the hammock also. Now the fabric shouldn't jump up into the zipper. I do have one more tip to show you, and then we'll head back out to the woods and see how to reverse it. I said one tip, but I'm going to give you 2. First, I'd said, my ridge line I'm making from this tech line from DIY Gear Supply. The other end is a fixed loop, but this end is an adjustable loop. I made it like you would make a whoopee sling adjustable loop. Until I get the final length of ridge line that I want dialed in, I'm going to leave it adjustable, but once I figure it out, then I'll make this a fixed loop. I started with it at 115 inches from tip to tip though. Second tip, I use 8-inch continuous loops of am steel to gather the ends of my hammock, but it's a little tricky to get them through this long 1.5-inch wide channel, so I use the toggle for my whoopee slings. I lark's head on the toggle to the whoopee sling, and then I work the toggle through. And I'll loop the continuous loop over my pinky so it doesn't go all the way into the channel. Once I get it through, I can remove the toggle. And I'll lark's head one end of the continuous loop through the other end of it. And then my ridge line goes over that. Making these 8-inch continuous loops of am steel, making the ridge line, and whoopee slings are outside the scope of this video. I'm going to refer you to Ian Young's channel for making those things. I've got links in the description below to them. Now we're ready to head out to the woods and reverse from the white to the camo. To reverse the hammock, I first opened up the zipper all the way, and next I'll disconnect both of the guy out points, and I've just got them with S-beaners and shot cord. Next, at each end of the hammock, I disconnect the hammock suspension from the tree side suspension, and I've just got my 8-inch continuous loops of am steel over marlin spike hitches in my tree straps. I also need to take the ridge line loops off the loops of am steel. The ridge line comes entirely out of the hammock. Then I'll loosen up a little bit my continuous loops of am steel and push everything to the inside. Now I can reach into the hammock, find both continuous loops of am steel, and just pull everything inside out. Now I do have to spin the hammock 180 degrees, and I'll hang it back up. The ridge line goes back in the hammock and loops over the continuous loops of am steel. And for today, I'm going to put my am steel loop back over the marlin spike hitch. And I shouldn't have to change my guy outs at all. They're still in the same relative positions. I still have an opening between the two layers of fabric. And the guy out on the back side of the hammock also still in the same relative position, and I still have an opening between the two layers of fabric here. This is the one that was on the inside. And there you have it, a double layer hammock that's reversible, and it has a sewn-in bug net. If you're making a single or double layer hammock with or without a bug net, guys, I hope you got some ideas from this video. Thanks for watching.